Whistleblower slash leaker Edward Snowden's penchant for mischief. We've learned that back in 2009, while working for the CIA in Geneva, he accessed his personnel file and tried to change parts of his evaluation. But the CIA said in a statement that they did not file a report on Snowden at the time that indicated he tried to break into classified computer files. This latest revelation, however, it's part of the ongoing investigation into how Snowden accessed and shared classified information from the National Security Agency. Meanwhile, Snowden has been settling into his new life in Russia. His lawyer says he's soaking in Russian culture, learning the language, and enjoying asylum. Apparently, he also has a girlfriend, hopefully one who loves to blog as much as the last one. His father, Lon Snowden, arrived in Russia yesterday, and according to the Russian news agency Interfax, had a, quote, emotional reunion with his son. Snowden has just received a prize, a whistleblower award that was presented to him this week by a group of former U.S. intelligence officials. And joining me now from Moscow are two of the men who met with Snowden, former NSA official and whistleblower Thomas Drake and former CIA analyst Ray McGovern. Thank you to both of you and for staying up so late. We appreciate it. You met with Snowden for about 6 hours. That's something a lot of people, especially members of the U.S. intelligence community, they would really like the opportunity to do. What is his life like now, and how would you describe how he's living? Ray and then Tom.
Well, we wanted to show support for him and show him that a lot of people back home, as well as people visiting him, knew what he did and knew the tough circumstances that he faced. He appeared quite well. He was very articulate and very well up on things like the suggestions by the head of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers, and former CIA Director Mike Hayden, that Snowden might well be put on the kill list for assassination. When I asked Snowden about that, he just shook his head as if to say, my goodness, what have we come to?
And Tom, I read a comment.
By all of his accounts, he's settling in quite well.
And Tom, I read an account, and Ray, please join in as well, that the laptop computers that he carried, he told you, were actually empty. They didn't have intelligence information in them at all.
You don't need to carry laptop computers to carry out information. Laptop computers just are the place in which you look at things. I believe that's largely a myth. There's a lot of misinformation perpetuated as a result of his escape from the United States and disclosures he made to the press.
And Tom, were you told not to go to Russia by the Obama administration? Did they weigh in at all?
I mean, that's another myth. No way, shape, and form. There was no communication at all, nothing to prevent me. There was no other requests for interviews or why are you going? Not at all.
Ray, what are his concerns right now? Is he worried about that he will have to live in Russia for the rest of his life? Is he worried about bodily harm coming to him?
What we saw was a man at peace with his decisions, a man who's proud of doing what he did, a man with no regrets. It was quite remarkable. A young fellow like that, willing to pay the price, as he said initially, for releasing these documents. You know, it sounds a little corny, but he swore the same solemn oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, as Tom and I did. Some of us take that more seriously than others, and when he was in the position doing what he did, seeing gross violations of the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, First Amendment, you know, you have a choice there. You can keep silent, you can hide behind a promise on a piece of paper to keep secret even gross crimes and misdemeanors, or you can speak out. What we admire in Ed Snowden is he chose to do the latter. He chose to speak out expressly so that the rest of the Americans could know what was being done to their civil rights under the Bill of Rights of the Constitution.
And Tom, I know you have strong feelings about claims being made by the Obama administration that what Ed Snowden did made it more difficult for the U.S. government to protect U.S. citizens from terrorism and other threats. Why are those officials wrong?
The officials are wrong because it's secrecy. It's actually subverting our own security. And they do not want the truth about their conduct violating the Constitution, violating the sovereignty of individuals, as not just U.S. citizens, but also citizens in other parts of the world. and that they're also violating existing congressional legislation, including the FISA Amendments Act as well as the Patriot Act, if truth be told.
All right, Ray McGovern, Thomas Drake, thank you so much. I know it's late in Russia. We look forward to seeing you at a better time zone for you than the current one. Thanks so much again.